man, Friday afternoon. Welcome. I am Fred Wellman. Welcome to Online with VoteVets. I'm your host, Fred Wellman, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel. Great to see you guys here. A lot to see. The regulars are streaming in. Glad to have you guys here. It's such an exciting day. It's Friday. It is crazy as always. I don't know what kind of week you've had. I've had a crazy week. Let me close on that real quick because I got the crazies going here. I can hear you guys in my ear. So let's get to the news. We've got a great guest, a lot to talk about, and I'm eager to get working. If you've been following the news at all, you know it's just been an insane week in Washington, D.C. between the Pentagon and the VA. Let's start with the Pentagon first. Pete Hegseth has had a really bad week, okay? Let's just start right there. So it started off about 5 days ago with a new article that came out that showed the New York Times broke the news that Pete Hegseth had created not just one, the signal group he was in that we knew about with the National Security Advisor and other cabinet members for the Houthis attack, but had created a separate signal chat with his family members, his wife, his brother, who's a liaison from HLS, his personal lawyer, and others, 13 people in this group chat. And in that group chat, he shared the exact same information, the classified strike plans on Yemen, as he did in the other group chat we heard about 3 weeks ago. What's shocking about this one is this has been confirmed by sources that it was on his personal phone. First of all, it was his personal phone being used, and that he had actually been warned by his aides not to use that group chat to talk about the information, this classified strikes and all that. And he ignored that and 2 days later sent this information about the Houthi strikes to his family. And he's saying now, first, of course, the thing they keep doing is, it's not really a war plan, because somebody said it was a war plan. It was a strike plan, whichever, what do you want to call it? But saying, we only did that for media coordination, because obviously his wife, who's not an employee of the DOD, really needs to know about raids on Yemen so she can coordinate the media. So all those excuses are bullshit, but it didn't end there. I mean, that's the punch on the story, is the week just kept getting worse, because once people started digging into this second signal, they discovered this, and this came out on several news sources. And as it turns out, we found out that he actually had a special computer put in his office, which is a classified workspace, by the way. He had what they call a dirty line put into his office so he could use Signal on a desktop and not just on his phone, because if you know the Pentagon, phones don't work very well. So he actually had them put in a non-secure computer in his classified office so he could keep on text. Now, one of the things we've been saying since the beginning, if you've been following us here at VoteVets and my stuff I've been saying, is there's no way he didn't copy and paste those strike plans. Because we did find out in a previous story last week that the strike plans he sent actually, I think it was this week, they did come from CENTCOM Commander. The CENTCOM Commander sent the strike plan update, exactly what you saw in those group chats from the Atlantic. Those were sent from General Kurilla to the Secretary of Defense. At some point, they got copied and pasted and put into Signal. Well, now we're finding out why, because he's using a personal computer or a personal phone to discuss Signal. It goes on and on. I even cover all the stories, the makeup room. Here's another. Here's where it gets even crazier. His phone number that he's using, we got this story just today, I think. His phone number is actually listed all over the freaking internet. Like, believe it or not, you can find his phone number that he's using to send classified information to his family and others. It's his Facebook phone number, for God's sake. It's the number he uses for a betting site. Like, when reporters looked up his phone number, they found the exact phone number that he's using stuck to his ear right there. Now, do you think the Secretary of Defense has one of the most targeted phones on planet Earth? The United States Secretary of Defense, his phone is probably the most targeted intelligence asset on the planet, and our Secretary of Defense is running around using that and that personal line to conduct his business. As I saw in the chat, yes, there's also the makeup story, which they've denied vehemently since, but he did put in for a makeup room to turn the green room at the Pentagon press conference room into a makeup kind of studio prep thing. I didn't want to deem that story because it's so ridiculous. But it gets worse. Here's a story from the Wall Street Journal that came out just yesterday. And this one's nuts. So what happened is he's losing it, man. And this is what they go into. He literally cussed out the acting chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Admiral Grady. He literally said, "I'll hook you up to a fucking polygraph," he shouted at him in a public. He demanded proof that Grady hadn't leaked news of his March 21st briefing to Elon Musk about China. Now, here's the punchline of that whole story. No one's denying that Pete Hegseth planned to give Elon Musk a classified briefing on China. It got leaked somehow. We don't know whom. And then when it got leaked, Trump found out about it, and he actually scuttled the whole plan. But DOD's been saying it was never the plan. But we now know it was a plan to give Elon a classified briefing on China. And now Hex has been losing his mind ever since about who leaked that information. And it's gotten crazier for him each day. He accused a number of other people. He was talking about using polygraphs on 4-star flag officers, admirals, and generals. But on top of that, he's had all kinds of crazy stuff happening. 5 of his political appointees that he brought with him have either been fired or resigned, to include this week, Casper, his chief of staff, also left. And the stories out of that guy are crazy. Talk about, apparently he sat down in a briefing room with generals and staff, talked about the dump he just took before coming into the conference room. Okay, this is the Secretary of Defense's chief of staff. So he's out now too. Of course, the Joint Staff declined to comment about all this, but it goes on that the chaos he's sowing inside the Department of Defense is causing all problems. And he's become paranoid every day about losing his job. He sees the media, he sees us talking about him, and he's going crazy trying to keep it under wraps. A guy on the rocks, okay? And none of us can figure out why. There's another story that came out this week, too, that his wife apparently is spending all of her time with him in the DOD. We've seen stories. They call her Yoko Ono inside DOD because she's constantly around. And apparently her mission is to keep him sober, keep his pants zipped, okay? You can't make this stuff up about the United States Secretary of Defense. His wife has to keep an eye on him as his sobriety partner while at work. You've never had someone who's more of a national security vulnerability in a position this high ranking in the history of the United States. And I swear, I can't even imagine someone who's more vulnerable to attack and intelligence hacking and everything else. Because guys, look, Signal is an encrypted app, but if you've got control of a phone, you can see everything's being typed. So it's not actually secure. Hence the reason it's not considered a secure app for classified information, no matter how much they want to tell you it is. So needless to say, things are in chaos at the Pentagon. This is on top of the fact that in the middle of all this, in the middle of us dealing with China, in the middle of us allegedly negotiating with Russia over the Ukraine war, we don't have the NSA, the National Security Agency, doesn't have, if you remember 2 weeks ago, Laura Loomer got the head of the National Security Agency and his deputy fired because they weren't loyal enough. And Pete has not bothered appointing a replacement yet. So the top signals intelligence organization in the United States government doesn't have a leadership team because Laura Loomer got rid of them. I wish I could make this shit up, you guys. I mean, I even hear myself when I'm talking to you hear how all ridiculous all of this is, because it's all so fucking ridiculous. But that's where we're at right now. This is where we are, this chaos. And guess what Pete's doing today to address all the chaos? Well, he hopped on a plane in his newest REI outfit and flew down to the border for a photo op, because that's what Pete does. So that's that's going on at the Pentagon. We got a lot more to talk about with our guest. Now, over at the VA, not to be left out, the VA hates being left out of this stuff. So Doug Collins over VA, this week, he personally sent out an email to all of the thousands of VA employees saying they're forming an anti-Christian bias task force to investigate reports of anti-Christian bias within the VA and, of course, the entire federal government. Yeah, I can't make this up. They even sent out they sent out a list of things that they want employees to report to the anti-Christian bias task force they're forming. And there's an email they set up. And this includes things like not having accommodations made for their special holidays, or being forced to do things that they didn't want to do against their religion, like abortions or hormone therapy for transgender Americans, and on and on. And they want VA employees to rat out fellow VA employees to this anti-Christian bias task force at va.gov, or I think it's anti-Christian bias reporting at va.gov. If you want to email them, I won't tell you to do that. So the VA, obviously, this is yet another mandate that's been pushed down from headquarters on top of all the other things that our VA employees are dealing with. The same week, they were ordered to this week they were ordered to return to work, which caused a lot of chaos. I think we talked about it last week, you guys, about all the chaos from actually having telehealth mental health providers work in cubicle farms because there's not enough office space for them. This is on top of a lot of the other crazy things. So we really wanted to bring a guest who's been on top of all these things. His resume is unbelievable, and he's a good friend. You may have seen his report. So this is his latest in Rolling Stone, where he talks about, my friend Michael Embrich talks about who's going to pay for all the damage that Doge has done to our veterans. And he's got a great discussion in there of exactly all these things. So let's bring Michael. Michael's a Rolling Stone opinion columnist, co-host of the Washed podcast, veteran, former member of the Secretary of Veteran Affairs Advisory Committee and the Readjustment of Veterans, and a former congressional staffer. Let's welcome Michael Embrich to the show. Mike, come on in. Meeting us out in the sunny streets.
Good morning, Fred. And as I said in the green room, I'm across the street from Luigi Mangione's trial hearing, so it's pretty busy here in Lower Manhattan today.
Wow, man, it sounds like. Well, we appreciate you dialing in for us, man. It's always great to hear from you. Man, your piece this week struck a lot of people. You have a big roll-up and hit on some of the things that you're seeing some real damage being done to our veterans through Doge, through Doug Collins. I mean, what are the kind of things that you're keeping an eye on?
Yeah, and I mean, like you'd stated, it's really hard to keep up with this stuff because it's chaos by design. Every day we have a new headline, on the defense side, on the VA side, also just the regular politics that go on in the United States. So Doge has been proven, and I think from the very beginning, it's really hard to trick people, especially in this media environment where people have access to everything and stuff is so easily leaked to the press. But Doge has been a scam from the get-go.
Yeah.
All they did was cancel contracts that were legally brought into agreement by federal agencies, which they have the authority to do, with money that was voted to be spent by Congress. And many of the contracts were for things like a VA, a vet center location in Mesa, Arizona. It was stuff that there's no immediate savings and actually will end up costing taxpayers more money. Now, by Doge's own accounting, they've saved $50 billion, which in a $7 trillion budget is not a lot of money, but nobody believes that. But by the government's own admission, Doge has already cost the government $55 billion. So it's cost $5 billion more dollars to operate Doge than they have saved with cost-cutting measures that were basically just violating the law by annulling money that Congress had allocated for federal spending and going back on agreements with, by the way, many of the agreements that were canceled were to disabled veteran-owned businesses that lost billions of dollars. We're not even going to know how much veteran disabled-owned businesses have lost in contracts in VA probably until next budget cycle. But by the early estimates, it's billions of dollars. So not only hurting veterans at VA, not only hurting veterans who work at VA, not only hurting veterans who get their services from VA, but hurting that small ecosystem of veteran-owned businesses that they make their living off of. This is supposed to be the administration of small business and, helping small businesses, and they're killing veteran-owned small businesses all over the United States with their cuts, not only at VA, but throughout the federal government. And I use the word cut very liberally.
Yeah, and the kicker is, we've spent, you and I are both Global War on Terror veterans, by the way. You're a Navy veteran. I'm sorry.
It was okay this year.
We got JJ's Air Force. We have a joint staff. We have a joint show this week. But having said that, we worked very hard. I mean, the unemployment rate for veterans was astronomical in 2010, 11. They've worked a lot. I mean, the SBA kicked in, the VA kicked in, a lot of, joining forces under Mrs. Obama and Dr. Biden kicked in, the Chamber of Commerce, all these programs kicked in to get veterans jobs and help them going on to, the Syracuse University's Institute for Veterans and Military Affairs. I know you're familiar with IVMF. They've been pushing veteran-owned business. All these things are being damaged in just 3 months. We're putting veterans out of business. We're firing thousands of veterans. I mean, the damage is very real after all the work we did in the last 20 to make things better for our veterans, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, post 9/11, I was one of the first post 9/11 veterans. So I remember the GI Bill being set at Vietnam era levels. I remember trying to go to my state school, Rutgers here, and trying to figure out, wow, how am I going to pay for my books? How am I going to pay half of my tuition because the GI Bill doesn't cover it? And myself and veterans like you in the VFW, the American Legion, and so many others did so much work to get veterans to a point where when they do transition out of service, there's a lot of support systems there for them to become successful. And as you said, we're seeing that all being torn down in about 4 months here by the Trump administration. And seemingly there's no end in sight. I'm still waiting. A story you didn't cover, but which is recently breaking, is that VA at the Secretary's office, they're making people sign NDAs. Which was actually ruled illegal in the last Trump administration, but they don't really care about the laws. So we know the other shoe's going to drop at VA. The 80,000 that they're going to lay off there or fire, I think is just the beginning of their plans to basically privatize VA. They tried to do it in the first administration. They got a lot of kickback from the veterans groups, and now there's no re-election plan, so they don't really care. So I think they're going to move very, very rapidly to try to privatize VA.
I agree too, and I think that they're using this idea of it being, efficiency and being reform to do it. So it's going to be a reform effort to fire 83,000 to 125,000 people, and then when that fails, to say, well, we tried to save it, but we couldn't, and they'll get rid of the whole damn thing or privatize like they've always wanted in the first place. One of the things you did mention in your story, and that I've been tracking, is this story about the mortgage protection program that they're quietly canceling starting May 2nd. It's a shocking one, since the homeless point in time count, I think, was 32,000 homeless veterans this last cycle, right? It's gone down quite a bit, but we're talking 80,000 veterans who are in this program, right? Can you explain a little bit about that program for those who don't know about it?
Yeah, so and it's certainly it's a program that came out during COVID, and it basically paused mortgages for veterans who were struggling or who were experiencing unemployment due to COVID, which is still going on right now. Obviously, not everybody got back. And not to mention, 30% of the federal government are veterans. So these sweeping cuts that they're doing across all agencies is putting and I know many veterans who are thinking, wow, how am I going to pay my mortgage? And now the protection program goes away. So now these mortgages are going to go into default, and you know who's going to pay for them if you have a VA loan? You and me, the American taxpayer. In classic Trump fashion, there's no more guardrails. There's no firewall to stop them. They are going to burn the federal government down at any cost necessary, just to prove a point on X. I don't know. I don't know what the reason is, but they're just doing it for the sake of doing it. And the veterans are going to pay the price.
Yeah, I agree, and that program scares me. I mean, this is going to be, for those who understand, my understanding is about 40,000 actual active veterans who are in this program to protect their mortgages from the banks foreclosing on them. And on May 2nd, it just ends. At that point, we'll probably start seeing foreclosures within a couple of months. And honestly, there's more veterans in this home protection plan than there are allegedly homeless veterans. We're going to see a massive. Of course, we won't be able to trust in the data we get from the government anymore either, will we, Mike?
No, but I mean, aside from destroying the overall American economy, they're going to destroy the social safety nets that keep people out of abject poverty and veterans off of our streets, and out of our soup kitchens. So I think we're going to get a nice, really quick trip back in time to the 1930s, when veterans had to, fight just for money that they were promised. You're going to see veteran homeless encampments pop up. Homeless rates were at the lowest that they've ever been since they started tracking that kind of data. We're going to see that. We're going to see that go up. And like you said, we're not even going to be able to trust the VA's data. The VA used to be the most trusted source of this data, and now we're going to have to rely on nonprofits who are also having their funds being cut by DOJ. I think everybody's starting to see a theme here. It's a systemic dismantlement of the entire system that this country has grown to love, to become what, Venezuela or Russia? Because I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but I've been to both places. Not so good, not so great, not a place you want to live in.
No. And, it's funny that the same thing we talk about, but in Iraq, I've seen people mention, oh, I'm worried about violence. Like, trust me, I lived in a place where political violence was the norm. And you're right. We do not want that here, and there's some scary indications there. And we're disenfranchising a lot of people who have struggled to make ends meet, struggled to be stable. And I'm shocked they don't think it's going to cause problems. I mean, they've been just blowing smoke up our ass, telling us it's not going to cause problems. There's not going to be hurt. But we know the NDA thing. Let's go back to that. The NDA thing tells us, we joke here me and JJ joke here that, with the sources we have at VA, we pretty much know when Doug Collins farts in his office, before he does, it's like, there's and it goes back to the fact that people who work at VA aren't there to get rich. They're not there they're there because they want to help veterans. And I think it feels like Doug Collins, even Hegs, I think, that since they had broad support at the ballot box by military members, members and veterans, that they would have this broad support to go crazy in their offices. And they're finding out in a very harsh way that's not true, is it?
Yeah, and they're running with this false narrative that people hate the VA. The VA has some of its highest approval ratings that it's ever had. Is the VA
Yeah.
perfect? No. But that's like saying, oh, I have a hole in the sheetrock in my house. I'm going to tear my whole house down. No, you need to invest more in these programs to make them work better. You need to invest more in our veterans to make sure they're cared for. And something we didn't even talk about is cutting funding to universities like Harvard, who partner with VA and have the best scientists and researchers working for free to ensure our veterans get the best treatment for PTSD, the best treatment for prosthetics, the best treatment for the kinds of ailments that they deal with, for the societal ills that they deal with when they come home. And we're throwing universities under the bus. And as I said, it's almost impossible for even the average layman to not notice a pattern, a systemic dismantlement of the United States system as it exists. And who does that benefit? It might benefit Vladimir Putin. It certainly doesn't benefit veterans. It doesn't benefit Americans because, like you said, there are ancillary problems that come from these things. Like in Iraq, we saw, right? If people didn't have a business at their car shop turned into a bomb shop, right? Like that's the kind of thing we're going to deal with in America. And it may not be that extreme, but you're going to see crime rates increase. You're going to see homelessness rates increase. You're going to see veterans living on the streets. And it's the kind of thing, it's a shame that for 20 years we've worked so hard to change these things. And we're just getting to a point where veterans are getting comfortable in their transition period and there's no more wars to devastate their lives, that we're going to have to start from square one again.
That's a terrifying thought on its own. I mean, and you're absolutely right. And so many of our peers have struggled. So many of our peers are just getting on their street. We're seeing suicide. I saw Chris Goldsmith, my friend Chris Goldsmith, who's a friend of the show, reported that a friend of his had gone to the VA for a pharmaceutical refill and stopped by the ER and saw that the ER had 3 suicide attempts that day come in at the VA hospital, and all 3 of the men had failed, but said the reason was they were afraid of losing their benefits and becoming a burden on their families in one day. And so, anecdotally, we're already hearing the backlash, aren't we?
Yeah, and I mean, there's another case of there's a cancer patient getting experimental care for cancer, and the university's funding got cut. I mean, these are things that don't make the headlines, but that are happening every single day to veterans, and hurting them, and killing them, frankly. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it's life and death for a lot of veterans. So they don't want to be burdens on their family. They don't want to be burdens on society. There's a certain pride that comes with military service. And as someone who's lived in their car, it's not fun, and you don't want to do that. You want to be able to set up to succeed, and it's unfortunate that we have to go through this.
And that's on top of the chaos. We started to talk at this story about the chaos at DOD as well. And now you can touch on that. You've touched on that in your writing as well. The chaos. I mean, who's running the DOD when the Secretary of Defense spends more of his time worried about who's backstabbing him in his inner office, right? It's one of the biggest jobs in the world, and the man running it is clearly not up to the task, is he?
Yeah, I mean, he's wholly unfit to lead. I mean, I think that if you followed his career and the way he burned down those small veterans organizations, and he's such a fickle kind of person that putting him into a big organization with a lot of moving parts was a huge failing of the Trump administration. I understand that's Trump's guy and he had to pay back a favor or whatever he thought, but Pete Hegseth is burning down the Department of Defense as we speak. You have people flying out the door, a lot of turnover there, when it used to be a place people used to really love to work at. And most of the friction is because people won't listen to them. I mean, we all know about the Snapchat and the stuff. I mean, the Snapchat, the Signal app, and all the stuff that's going. I'm sure he's talking on Snapchat too, by the way. But the Signal app,
I'm afraid to find out what he's saying on there.
And all the.
Oh, I bet he is.
I don't want to get sued, so I'll refrain. But But everything that's going on with the Signal app and having his wife there, we don't even know if his wife or his brother have security clearance because they won't tell us.
No.
So we don't know what kind of information that they're dealing with. They're certainly not dealing in SCIFs and in sensitive compartmentalized information facilities. If I was China or Russia, I'd have a huge target on their back. I'd have all my intelligence people licking their chops like it's Christmas Day, going after these guys' phones. And you mentioned, the screens, the screen share that they're going to get. They're going to see all his passwords. Not only his DOD passwords, they're going to see all his passwords, anything that he types into his phone. Remember the days where it was a huge scandal that China had keystrokes to our drones, and that was the biggest story ever. And now, the Secretary of Defense has been fully compromised by foreign governments and not a peep. It's, it's all the fake media. We're just making this up because we like to
Yeah.
make stuff up about the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah, that's we got nothing but free time to do that. But and then
Yeah.
and then the funny thing is the genius that he is, the political genius he is, and anybody's worked in politics like we have too. He's firing the people all the secrets, right?
Yeah.
It's like when I saw when he fired Caldwell. I mean, John Ulyat wrote a freaking op-ed against him for God's sake. It's like the old saying in it's the saying there that you got folks joining in there. There you go. But yeah, it's like you keep your enemies, you keep your friends closer, enemies closer, right? And he doesn't even understand that part of the deal, because the people who know his secrets now are out and about with freedom to talk about them now, aren't they? You get noisy. Oh, it's a party. Oh, we lost him.
I'm gonna change scenery here. I'm gonna.
There you go. I love it. Well,
what I've been looking at here. So
wow.
yeah, so it's I guess these are the downfalls of doing interviews outside, but I kind of had no choice today. But yeah,
no, I love it.
Yes,
and you got your day job to go back to too, so I don't want to keep you too long. We're going to answer questions for the fans here anyways when you let you go, man. It looks like you got a busy day in downtown there. I really appreciate your time, Mike. You're the best, and thanks for keep writing, keep track of what's going on out there.
Fred, thank you so much for having me. You guys have a great show.
See you, brother.
Take care.
Oh, I love it. Man on the Streets interview. You can't beat that. That's what you get here live at VoteVets, folks. It's a live show. Hey, look, I promise I'd come back, and if you want me to answer some questions, hey, obviously there's a lot going on, and VoteVets is acting. We got a lot of people asking about protests. There is, although we are not a part of it yet, there is a group putting together a protest in Washington, D.C. for veterans on June 6th. There's a lot going on with that. That's going to be a big one. I know some stuff about that one. We've got some very cool things coming up here at VoteVets. We're excited to I can't announce it yet, but I will. It's going to be very cool. We're organizing here as well. And of course, about our investments in races like Virginia and elsewhere. So it's a lot of exciting things going on here at VoteVets, and we're real proud. Does anybody have any? If you don't have any questions, I'll let you go. But you're right. The amount of here we go. Veterans are opposed to Virginia. What are you hearing from currently listed hires? Okay, so there's two things I want to ask. I'll give you two angles on that. Okay, we are hearing of consternation and frustration. I am getting a lot of reports from the ranks of people going, this is not how it's supposed to be. The politicization you see now, there's serving officers going out, talk about DEI. I mean, just they're unleashed now. But there's a lot of folks who are just horrified. I mean, imagine hearing that the acting chairman of the Joint Chiefs had his ass chewed by a guy who barely made major, accusing him of leaking. This is a 4-star admiral, okay? It's a 4-star generals were being accused by this 44-year-old nut job. So there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. Now, let me put this second thing, okay? As far as them speaking out, I don't want to, and we don't want to. This is Fred's opinion, not necessarily official policy, but a lot of us who have served, and especially the officer, I'm an officer, I would rather our leadership in the DoD wait until there's really something bad. I was at a town. I was speaking at a town hall the other day, and someone said, Fred, they need to speak up about this ridiculous parade. Actually, I disagree. Okay, the parade is dumb. It's not illegal. Okay, it's not a violation of their orders. It's not a violation of the Constitution. We will want our military leadership and of all ranks to pick their battles when the time comes. Let's say he puts in the Insurrection Act. We're barely talking about the fact they've created a military installation for a good chunk of the border of New Mexico and Arizona, where they're going to have Army soldiers patrolling it, since it's now a military base, with armed weapons, with live ammunition, patrolling the border. What happens when it comes to a point where they're told to shoot people, okay? So there are some really big constitutional crisis level things that could happen underneath the Trump administration. And for me, as a professional former officer and an advocate, I would like them to hold their powder dry until those things happen. Does that make sense? There's no sense in protesting things like parades or, the firings are wrong, but they're not illegal. Does that make sense? I mean, if you remember the first Trump administration, they used a helicopter to dust off the crowd in DC. Okay, that's some illegal shit right there. Okay, and that should never have happened. That's a violation of the Geneva Conventions. That's the kind of things I want our military leaders to keep their powder to say no to when the time comes. So for me, I would really prefer that our military leaders and members of the military, the uniformed military members, keep their powder dry, keep their mouth shut, and desperately stay out of this. Stay out of politics at all costs, if at all possible, which is going to be very hard. But I would like to see the apolitical military keep going. And when the time comes, they'll stand up, do the right thing. It's hard to say that. Now, military spouses, we of course we had a couple of military spouses on the show in the last 3 weeks. They're free to say whatever they want. They have freedom of speech. Veterans, we're here to talk about it. And I always tell my military friends who are frustrated and angry, look, send us the information. Let people who are already out here and have the freedom of speech to say the things you can't, let us handle that for you. So my answer to everybody is send us your tips. My DMs are open on almost every single platform I use. Send me your tips. I'm happy to talk to anybody who's got tips. But I'd like them to hold their water. So thanks for that question. Any other questions, JJ? Yep. Yeah, it is. I mean, what they're doing, look, the VA dismemberment is on purpose. Look, Doug Collins is smiling and saying, no, we're going to take care of veterans. It's all we want to do. But none of the plans they're making have anything to do with taking care of veterans. The getting rid of the home loan protection program is outrageous. That's going to make thousands. It doesn't even cost any real money for the VA to protect their home loans, but they're doing it. The same thing with these cuts, 83,000. No one who really has the best interest of an organization comes up with a random number to rolling back 4 years of growth, 4 years of improvement, and picking that random number, 83,000 to cut to, and then says, let's figure out who it should be. It's not how it works, okay? It's not, if you're trying to improve organization, any organization of any kind, be it a corporation or a military unit, you don't just say, we're going to cut half the people and then figure it out. So the goal has never been truly to have reform or improvement. It's dismantle it. It's to make it privatized. It's to make it fail. And that's exactly what they're doing. And I don't think that's true. Look, I see this all the time. Look, I see this all the time, you guys. The majority of vets and current military, you know what? The evidence for that is so flimsy. I get people telling me 75% of veterans voted for Trump. 80% of veterans voted for Trump. Guys, there is no backing of that. There is a single exit poll that came out from the last election that said 60%. Exit polls are notoriously fickle and wrong, okay? An exit poll is not a real poll. So to use those and say all of them voted for it is ridiculous. But let's go out on a limb. Let's say 60% of veterans voted for Trump. Well, we also know that only like 30% of people didn't even vote at all. When you run the numbers out, it's about 5 to 6 million people, veterans, voted for Trump. Well, there's 15 million living veterans, okay? Many of them, the average age is over the age of 60, okay? They're guys like me. They're older than me. I'm a young veteran in a lot of ways, okay? So those men and women didn't vote for any of this. They didn't vote to have their nursing homes closed. They didn't vote to become homeless, okay? So I'm not one of these guys who runs around saying, well, they voted for him, so who cares? No, we're here to serve all veterans and the military service members and their families and the national security of the United States. So we're going to fight for everybody. Why do they vote? Well, it's a lot to do with the culture. It's about the culture of the United States. It's the culture of the military. It is a conservative culture. And so, you know, it's a conservative culture. And for that reason, you see people will be out there and they'll be out, you know, standing for what they believe in. And maybe they didn't vote for all this, but, you know, they do what they do. But we're going to keep fighting for everybody. Any other questions? We're asked that one already. And I see affecting private veterans organizations. Yes. We're hearing some really ugly stories right now that veterans organizations and nonprofits that receive federal funding are being cut. So we'll probably start hearing stories soon of organizations that have parts. So for those who understand, much of the homelessness problem is being addressed through partnerships, private-public partnerships between homeless organizations and the federal government. So when you start seeing these cuts, things like the HUD VASH program, which is a HUD, it's certificates, it's basically free housing for homeless veterans, we're going to see some real problems among the VSOs and the veteran support organizations. So I haven't heard of any lawsuits yet, but I am hearing a lot of rumors of fear amongst the veteran service organizations that they could lose the funding they use to support veterans and they could become targets. Now, as far as the big 6 veterans organizations, I will not give away their secrets, but there's some that are in still and some that aren't. And if we know from the first Trump administration, they had favorite Trump veterans organizations they brought that were MAGA, and I won't say who they are, but did you guys see the veterans, the wounded guys wearing MAGA hats inside the Oval Office the other day? It wasn't any of us, I assure you that. Uh, so yeah, I think we're going to see some real impact on the private veteran organizations very, very soon. I think I'll drag this out long enough. So I think if anybody else has any questions, guys, I really appreciate you coming out here. We have almost 3,000 across all the platforms. Need to get more of you on YouTube. So I'm going to make the big push here, guys. We need you to get over to YouTube. Right, follow us on YouTube. I do not have a makeup room. Good question. Look at this face. Do I need it? I mean, look at this is all natural. There's no concealer. If you get really close, you can see my age spots. Anyway, but we digress. But we'd love you to go to the YouTube channel, click subscribe. Make sure you come watch videos on there. We'd love to have you there. We only got a few hundred. We got more people watching on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn than we do there. But our YouTube channel is becoming quickly the center of gravity for a lot of the work we're doing. We've got some people are joining. I'd love you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. In the meantime, you can go to our website, learn more about what we do at votevets.org. At votevets.org, you can do two things we want. And those are going to be very important for what's coming up. One, we really do need your support, your funding, your donation. If you can afford a couple dollars, I know it's a tight time. People are watching their money, but if you can afford to support our work, a donation would be much appreciated. Help us do that work. And then two, the take action. I told you we got some cool stuff coming. And that cool stuff coming, you're going to want to know about it. So go to our website, hit the take action button. You can sign your email there and be aware of what's going on at VoteVets. We've got some really cool stuff going on. Thank you for that, Miss Marcia. We've got some very cool stuff coming up. I can't wait to announce and let you know. I'm sworn to secrecy, so I won't do that. But you do want to sign up and be aware of what VoteVets is doing for you, for our veterans and their family members, and our national security. There's a lot more to talk about next week. Ukraine's up in the air again. Obviously, there's going to be something crazy at the DoD, I'm sure of. In the meantime, stay up with us. If you're watching us, we're doing quick videos. You'll see I've done a couple of videos this week about this crazy stuff happening at DoD, a couple of videos about VA. Make sure you follow us on all of our social media channels. That's VoteVets everywhere. And in the meantime, it is a great time to see you guys on a Friday afternoon. We got a lot going on. We will see you again the same place next week. Mark your calendars, 1 p.m. Eastern. Be back here for VoteVets on the line with VoteVets. I am Fred Wellman. Thanks to JJ, the producer, and all of our support. We will see you guys again next week.